Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gautama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and we're studying Chapter 13 in Volume 1 in this book titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. Chapter 13 is all about identifying your cravings through practicing analysis of the mind, where you look inward and become introspective to be able to identify your individual cravings and then almost surgically go in and actually remove them. So I'm going to teach you guys this technique where you can almost surgically eliminate these cravings, desires, attachments. Because up to now, I've been teaching you all the core central teachings, the foundational teachings, and you've learned about how to eliminate craving, desire, attachment with breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity, which generally trains the mind to eliminate cravings, desires, attachments. But now that if you've been doing that for the last 3.5 months or maybe even longer, you can actually learn this technique where you can go in and almost surgically remove certain attachments. So as always, I'm going to start our class with some meditation. And then afterwards, I will go into sharing the teachings with you about Chapter 13, guiding you in understanding what this is all about so that you can then implement it into your day-to-day life. And then you'll be able to experience the benefits of having removed these cravings, desires, attachments out of the mind. So welcome to all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly, whether you're joining on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or maybe you're even listening to this on the replay through YouTube or our podcast. Welcome to everybody. If you'd like to join for meditation, you can take a position either seated, lying, or standing. These tend to work out really well for online learning. I'll start with the chanting to ease us into the meditation. Then I'll come in with some guidance. Then there'll be a period of time where it'll just be quiet and we're meditating together. Then I'll come back in with some more chanting to bring us out of the meditation. And that's where I'll start our class for today in terms of teaching you Chapter 13. So if you'd like to make yourself comfortable, I'll go ahead and start with the chanting, and you're welcome to join along in the chanting as well. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanhang Abhivateyami Savakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava สัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสานามาสติสตาตาวามานุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, with the hands and arms in the lower body nice and comfortable, with the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that the mind moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะกะวาพุทธังมะกะวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมะกะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรภูริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you'd like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to those of you guys that joined us from the very beginning and those of you guys that joined us since we started meditating. Welcome to those of you guys that are maybe this is your first time learning with me, or any of you guys that have been learning regularly. Welcome to everybody and anybody. In this group learning program, each Sunday, I'm taking my time to walk you through this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, and I'm going chapter by chapter. And today is chapter 13 in this book. And this chapter is titled Identifying Cravings, an Analysis of the Mind. Essentially, that's what it's titled. There's a longer title there that you'll see. But what this chapter is teaching you about is helping you to understand how to go in and individually, almost surgically, eliminate individual cravings, desires, attachments in the mind. This is something that you would learn after you've already been practicing for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, something like this. And now that you've got breathing mindfulness meditation underway, you've got generosity underway, perhaps you've already learned the Eightfold Path. Now it's time to move into this to be able to understand how to go in and surgically remove your cravings, desires, attachments. Because everything that I've been teaching is being taught in a certain sequence for a reason. It's building you up to the point where you have a really strong foundation in what it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. And then there's other programs, courses, and retreats that will help you take it beyond the group learning program. So far you've learned the Eightfold Path, and last week I spent some time talking about the 3 universal truths and the 4 noble truths as a refresher for some of you guys, but for some of you it was the first time you might have learned the 3 universal truths and 4 noble truths. And what that was explaining to you is what the problem is in the unenlightened mind. It was explaining to you this discontentedness. It was explaining to you the cause of that problem, which is craving, desire, attachment. So the teachings of the Buddha are all about how to eliminate anger, frustration, the irritation, the annoyance, the guilt, the shame, the fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all these discontent feelings in others are eliminated from the enlightened mind. But how would you actually be able to eliminate these discontent feelings if you didn't know what was causing it? So the craving, desire, attachment is helping you to understand through the Four Noble Truths exactly what's causing these discontent feelings. And if you've done the work to learn the three universal truths and the Four Noble Truths and then independently verify it, you can actually see with 100% certainty that your mind is causing your own discontentedness. It's the cravings, the desires, the attachments, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection. And when the mind gets what it wants, it gets those conditioned pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But then when the mind doesn't get what it wants, it gets those painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, all of these and others. So the craving, desire, attachment is what's causing these discontent feelings to arise. I explained this also through the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots or the three fires back when we talked about chapter 8. Where you learned about the craving, the longing, the yearning, the selfish desires, the anger that arises where the mind becomes bitter and hostile and harsh. And when the mind doesn't understand the wisdom of what it takes and why the mind is experiencing these discontent feelings, that it has that ignorance or unknowing of true reality, it will tend to push people away. When you experience those painful feelings, you'll push people away thinking that that's solving the problem. Or you might push a situation away. This is called aversion. Or you might be bitter and harsh and hostile or aggressive towards others. And it's almost like an animal showing its teeth and growling and roaring and thinking that you're going to fear this other being into doing things your way. Or you might put your expectations on individuals, thinking that you can control them into doing things your way. But this doesn't work because even though the unenlightened mind continually tries to do that, where it's pushing people away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile, and putting your expectations on people, the mind still gets agitated over and over and over and over again. It's just a matter of time before the mind experiences some kind of discontent feeling. So I've introduced you and kind of helped you get started over the last 3.5 months with breathing mindfulness meditation, which is focusing on the breath, the meditation we just did. And when the mind moves off the breath, you're cutting that off and letting it go and bringing the mind back to the breath, training the mind to eliminate its craving, desire, attachment, where the mind's not holding on, because that's what craving and clinging does, is the mind's holding on to something, wanting it to be permanent. It can't let go. This is why when you were with that boyfriend or girlfriend, when you guys separated, you got very maybe lonely or bored or frustrated or agitated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. But at some point you chose to let go. Like, you know what? If she wants to be with someone else, so be it. Or if he wants to be with someone else, so be it. Or if they want to move across town or move across the country to some other place, so be it. You know, your mind let them go, and that's where your mind regained its composure, and you were able to not miss them and feel lonely and longing and yearning for them because your mind let go. So the mind in the unenlightened state, it doesn't know how to let go. It's craving this permanence. It's holding on. So that breathing mindfulness meditation, it isn't training your mind to eliminate your thoughts. It's training the mind to let go, so that if 15, 20, 30 different times during your meditation you had to let go, this is helping your mind to be able to let go in day-to-day life. And the same thing with generosity. If you're noticing that your mind is struggling with letting go, you would like to practice generosity with the people around you and other individuals. Practice generosity where you're giving and sharing with all beings, perhaps your friends or family, your coworkers, your life partner, your children, maybe people you don't even know. You're sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources without any expectation of anything in return. And this is the generalized training and the proactive training that you need to do on a consistent, ongoing basis in order to help the mind to let go. In meditation, frequency is more important than duration. So if it's a matter of one meditation for 30 minutes or two for 15, you would like to do the 2 for 15 and then gradually expand that to build up to 30 minutes or more. And the same thing with generosity. If it's a matter of donating 10 hours to an orphanage once a year, or maybe doing an hour a week, you would like to do it more frequently. Or if it's a matter of donating $500 once a year to some charitable organization, that's not as beneficial as if you donated $1 a week or $1 a day or $5 a day or something like that. That's going to be much more beneficial because the mind's having to let go more frequently. So this is what craving, desire, attachment is, and some of the generalized training that I've taught you in order to train the mind to let go. Craving, desire, attachment is also the fuel that causes rebirth. I know we haven't talked about rebirth much in this particular program, but we will when we get to chapter 22. I'm going to introduce you to the cycle of rebirth there. That's the fuel that's causing this craving, desire, attachment is the fuel that's causing this rebirth. So that if craving, desire, attachment is in the mind at the time of death, there's going to be rebirth. And it's also the cause of discontentedness. So if you eliminate craving, desire, attachment, not only have you eliminated the causes and conditions that is producing discontentedness, but you also have eliminated the cause and condition that's producing the rebirth and continuously coming back into the world. Because being born, it means that you're going to experience anger, sadness, frustration. It means you're going to experience sickness, aging, and death, and sorrow, and grief, and pain, and displeasure. So if you can eliminate the causes and conditions that are producing discontentedness, which is craving, desire, attachment, which also is the same cause and condition that's producing rebirth, then there won't be this continuous rebirth, and there you won't experience sickness, aging, and death over and over and over again, as well as the sorrow, grief, pain, and displeasure. So the number one goal on the path to enlightenment is to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. That's what the Buddha is guiding you to be able to do. That's why the Four Noble Truths is his very first teaching, giving you this window into understanding what is at the real cause or the real root of all these discontent feelings. He taught how to eliminate discontent feelings, and you needed to know what was actually causing them in order to be able to eliminate them. But how could you eliminate the cravings, desires, attachments if you didn't know how to identify them? That's what today's class is all about, is teaching you how to identify your cravings, desires, attachments. If it wasn't for the Eightfold Path, you wouldn't be able to identify your cravings, desires, attachments. That's why I needed to teach you that first. And if you've been developing your mind using the Eightfold Path, of course you're not perfect at it yet, but you're working in the direction of dialing that in closer and closer. You're going to need some of the qualities that you've been developing on the Eightfold Path. Like when you were developing your breathing mindfulness meditation, you're developing mindfulness or awareness of mind. So just like you've been developing meditation, and that was an important skill that I needed to help you to develop, there's also other tools and techniques that you need to develop in order to get to enlightenment. You wouldn't actually be able to just meditate your way to enlightenment. So that's why the Buddha didn't just teach meditation. And his teachings are in 45 large volumes that are very thick, because there's other things that you need besides just meditation. And identifying your cravings, desires, attachments is the second most important skill that you could develop next to meditation. That's why we teach meditation first, but then now we're going to come in and learn this, what I'm going to share with you here in a moment. So the breathing mindfulness meditation is training the mind to let go and eliminating craving, desire, attachment, but it's a more generalized training. It's a consistent, ongoing training that you're doing on a proactive basis. 2 to 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more. You'd like to build up to that point so that you're generally training the mind to let go, let go, let go. And this is going to ultimately help you to identify your cravings, desires, attachments, because you'll have mindfulness or awareness of mind. And with that awareness of mind, you'll be able to be introspective and look inward to be able to understand what are the cravings, desires, attachments in the mind. And then you'll be able to apply right effort. If you remember what right effort is that's where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're arising certain wholesome qualities. But you needed right mindfulness to be able to practice that. This is part of the mental discipline section of the Eightfold Path. There's right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And these are all working together in concert with each other. And so are all the other factors on the Eightfold Path working together. But here in the mental discipline section, you're practicing right concentration, which is the breathing mindfulness meditation and practicing singleness of mind to be able to just do one thing at a time. You're practicing mindfulness or awareness of mind, which is those 4 foundations of mindfulness. And then you're applying right effort to cut off and let go anytime you see an unwholesome quality in the mind. In meditation, you're cutting off anything and everything that arises because it's like exercising the mind. It's like taking the mind to the gym. But then in daily life, you're only cutting off the unwholesome qualities. And one of the things that you're going to start to be able to develop is you're going to notice this early warning system of the bodily sensations that are arising before the mind gets angry, before the mind experiences anger or frustration or even loneliness or boredom or shyness or even the pleasant feelings of happiness, excitement, elation. There's some bodily sensation that is like an early warning system, and it's alerting you that, hey, the mind is about to experience a conditioned feeling, either pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. And when you see that occurring, you would like to cut that off and let that go. And you'll get better and better at that as you're practicing breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity. But now you're going to need to use this as a way to now surgically go in and actually remove these cravings, desires, attachments. And here's the way that you can think about it before I actually teach you how to do it. The way that you can think about it is that if you had a car and you were driving down the road and a red light on the dashboard of the car came on and it said service engine soon, you would probably pull over. And if you have some skills, you'd probably pop open the hood and start looking under the hood and trying to figure out what's wrong with this particular car because you're not interested in breaking down on some dark country road somewhere. But if you didn't have the skills, you would take your car to an auto mechanic and have them sort it out and look at it and perhaps fix it for you. So it's the same thing that this red light on the dashboard of the car is alerting you to a problem that's under the hood of the car. The discontentedness is the red light on the dashboard alerting you that there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind. It's not possible for your mind to become discontent if there isn't a craving, desire, attachment in the mind. So anytime you're seeing discontentedness, this is an indication to you that the mind is not yet fully trained, that it's not enlightened, and there's some craving, desire, attachment in there, maybe multiple, that are producing this discontentedness. So when the discontentedness is arising, first, it's going to be a bodily sensation. And if we're talking about anger, you might notice some tightening in the chest, some tingling in the body, tightening in the throat. You might notice some heat in the face or pressure in the skull. This is the bodily sensation. This is the early warning system alerting you, hey, the mind's about to get angry. And this is like the red light on the dashboard of the car that's alerting you. And when you see that, you have an opportunity to cut that off and let it go. And depending on how long and how diligent you've been in training your mind, you'll get longer and longer periods of being able to cut that off and let that go. If you're not yet seeing the bodily sensations associated with your cravings, desires, attachments, this early warning system, it just means that you need to accumulate more benefits of your breathing mindfulness meditation to be able to be aware of these bodily sensations. But you'd like to clue into that sooner and sooner because that's the red light on the dashboard of your car. And if you miss it and you don't cut it off as a bodily sensation, now the mind forms a conditioned feeling. That's also the indication for you. That's the red light on the dashboard of your car. It's alerting you, hey, the mind's angry. There's some craving in there that's causing that. And oftentimes, the more intense the feelings, the more significant the cravings are. So you could have a really deeply held craving, but you could also have a lighter craving too. There's like a whole spectrum of them. And you can also have multiple cravings that are being triggered in any one bout of discontentedness. If you're going to extreme rage and anger, there's probably multiple cravings in there, or there's a particular craving that you have that's very strong. But if it's just kind of like a little bit of a irritation, a little bit of annoyance, it's just a smaller thing. So for example, if you got a phone call that your mom was in a terrible car accident and she's in the back of an ambulance on the way to the hospital, you might have deep discontent feelings related to this if you have a deep attachment to your mom. But if you just wanted to eat a Snickers bar or a bag of M&Ms and you walked into 7-Eleven and they didn't have them there, you might be like, man, they don't have my M&Ms. But you can let that go pretty quickly. But with mom, maybe this discontentedness is going to stick around for many weeks as she's recovering from this illness because the mind is still attached. But there's ways to eliminate these attachments. There's ways to surgically go in and eliminate it, whether it's the Snickers bar at 7-Eleven or whether it's the attachment to mom where she's in the hospital. Because as long as you allow these cravings, desires, attachments to reside in the mind, you're going to continue to experience discontentedness. It's going to be like you're in a cycle over and over and over again. You're going to notice that you lack concentration and clarity of mind and memory. Your mind's not performing optimally. You won't have that focus and clarity. And it's going to affect your relationships too. When you have discontentedness, you're going to be angry and irritable and grumpy for a consistent period of time. And this is going to affect your ability to function in the world harmoniously with other beings. So anytime you see discontentedness arising, whether it's as a bodily sensation or you don't notice it until it's a feeling, you would like to cut it off and let it go. This is the process that you would like to take. That when discontentedness is occurring, cut it off and let it go. Whether it's a conditioned pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, or a feeling that is neither painful nor pleasant. And if you can catch it as a bodily sensation, that's ideal. But you might not be there right now. If you've only been practicing for a few weeks or a few months, you might need to build up more accumulated benefits of the breathing mindfulness meditation before you're observant of those bodily sensations. But sooner and sooner, you would like to get aware of some of these bodily sensations, whether it's related to the pleasant feelings, the painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant. And remember, these are conditioned feelings. Based on some condition, the mind's going to get happy and excited and elated. So maybe if it's sunny outside, oh, I'm so happy. Yes, it's sunny outside. Or my bank account balance is here. Yay, I got to $5,000. Oh, I'm so happy, right? Or mom's coming over to visit this weekend. Oh, this is going to be so fun. We're going to cook some food. Mom's going to come. Yay, it's so wonderful, right? But if you allow the mind to experience those conditioned pleasant feelings based on some condition, those conditions aren't permanent. So that when you look outside and it's no longer sunny and it's raining, now the mind moves to the painful feelings. Or when you notice your bank account balance went from 5,000 to 3,000, now you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. Or if mom called you up on Tuesday and said she's going to come visit you, but then on Friday, she's like, hey guys, I had a change of plans. I can't come see you on Friday. I'm not going to be able to make it. If you got excited on Tuesday when she was telling you that she was coming to see you, that means on Friday you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be frustrated. And it's not mom that's causing that. That's being caused by your own mind. So if you can catch it as a bodily sensation, this is going to preserve the mind. This is going to maintain the calmness and the composure. And more, when you do this, you'll eliminate all your cravings, desires, attachments, and there won't be any arising of any discontent feelings. But in the process of making your way to enlightenment, you're going to notice these discontent feelings arising. And if you can catch it as a bodily sensation, that's ideal. Because that early warning system of the bodily sensations, it's like the mind saying, hey, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling, and you have an opportunity to do something here. Are you going to do it? And if you notice it, you can cut that off and let it go, and you can preserve the mind. You're not suppressing the feeling. You're cutting it off before it ever becomes a feeling as a bodily sensation. So with like something like shyness, we might say, I have butterflies in my stomach. But that's just queasiness that the stomach's feeling as a result of the cravings in the mind. So it's the bodily sensations that we're talking about there. But we kind of say, I have butterflies in my stomach, right? Or you might feel the heat in your face or the pressure in your skull. As you feel that and you notice that's occurring, that's the bodily sensation. If you can, cut it off and let it go. And in some cases, you're going to need to redirect the mind and take the mind in a different direction. You might need to go for a walk or a bike ride. Or if you're sitting there watching the news and there's something on the news and you're noticing frustration getting ready to arise as a bodily sensation, don't just sit there and dwell in that. Cut off the news, get up and go get a drink, go drink a water or fruit juice or something like this, right? Go off for a walk, go to the park, go for a bike ride, go take your kids for a walk or whatever it is, redirect the mind. And that might be what you need to cut it off and let it go. Ultimately, you'll be able to internally cut this off as your mind becomes more trained. But initially like this, you might need to redirect the mind by going outside or going for a walk or heading to the kitchen to get a glass of water or a glass of fruit juice or something like this, and that'll help you to cut it off and let it go. If it becomes a feeling, if the mind actually experiences a conditioned feeling, which it will on your way to enlightenment, you're going to experience frustration and agitation and annoyance for quite a while until your mind gets more trained. If you do get that conditioned feeling, try to cut it off and let it go there. That's what step one is. Cut it off and let it go. If you catch it as a bodily sensation, ideal, but if it becomes a feeling, try to cut it off there. Because if you don't, it's going to affect the condition of your mind. This is why you've been agitated in some situations for a few hours or a few days, or you've been grumpy and irritable for a week or two. This is because you didn't know to cut it off at the bodily sensation. You didn't know to cut it off as a feeling, and now it's affecting the general condition of the mind over a long-term period, like a few days or maybe a week or so. So at any point that you notice that the mind is discontent, cut it off and let it go. And the sooner you can do this as a bodily sensation, the better. Then, after your mind's gained its composure, and it might be a few minutes, it might be a few hours, it might be a few days, then you'd like to move to step 2, which is reflect on what cravings, desires, attachments led to that specific discontent feeling arising. Whether you cut it off as a bodily sensation or feeling, it doesn't matter, but there was some indication, which was the red light on the dashboard of your car, there was some discontentedness arising, and you were able to cut it off and let it go at some point, but now you need to look inward. You need to be introspective, and you need to objectively look at the mind and figure out what are the cravings, desires, attachments that are causing this. And there can be countless ones. I'm going to give you some examples here in a moment to be able to help you see how to do this and put this into practice. Then after you reflect and you discovered what is the actual craving, desire, attachment, or multiple ones, then you move to step 3, which is develop a plan to eliminate the specific cravings, desires, attachments that cause the discontent feelings to arise, while maintaining all along throughout your days and throughout your weeks a consistent practice of breathing mindfulness, meditation, and generosity. So you're always being proactive with your breathing mindfulness, meditation, and generosity, but now you're going to develop a specific plan to go in and almost surgically remove the cravings, desires, attachments. And this is going to work in about 80 or 90% of the situations. There's some cravings, desires, attachments that you can't really do this with, but it's okay because you'll still be able to eliminate them through all the other things that you're learning. And then after you've done that particular plan, then you repeat this process with each individual discontentedness. So you kind of learn this methodology and then you apply it to each individual situation. So let me give you some examples to help you. And then we're going to do a little group activity that I'll invite you guys to be able to share certain situations, and you'll be able to develop this skill, and I'll help you to be able to do that if you like. So at one time I had left my house and I left my mobile phone at home, and I was driving in the car and I reached for my pocket where I usually keep my phone, and I realized I didn't have my phone with me. And right away, fear came up into the mind, and I was able to cut that off and let it go. And I happened to be at a red light when this occurred. And when I was at the red light, I was like, man, what is that? Why did I get all that fear? And it was like, oh, my mind wants the phone. There's a craving there, because I let that go pretty quickly. So I was able to move right to step 2 in this situation at the light. And right away, my mind was like, let me turn around and U-turn and go get the phone. Because I was only like 5 minutes from my house. I could have easily went and got the phone. And that's what the unenlightened mind wanted to do at that particular moment, is it wanted to turn around and go get the phone. But with the wisdom of this path, I realized that that would be the most unwise thing that I could do, because the mind was craving permanence, and turning around and getting the phone was just giving the mind what it wanted. And that didn't actually solve the problem, because the next time I left without the phone, the fear would arise again. So what I needed to do is I needed to put the mind in the situation that it didn't want to be in. And I needed to train it that you're not going to have this phone with you permanently. So in that particular day, I was planning to be outside for about an hour and a half. I just had a couple of errands I needed to do. But instead, I decided to continue on with my day. I didn't go back and get the phone. In fact, I extended my day. Rather than just be out for an hour and a half, I extended it. I went and took myself to the movies. I went to dinner or lunch or whatever it was. I spent 5 or 6 hours outside, even though I was only supposed to be out for about an hour and a half. I extended the amount of time that I was outside. And then when I went home, I didn't just come in the house and rush to my phone and look to see what messages and emails and all that stuff that I had. I just came home. and I, did whatever I was going to do. Took off my shoes, maybe watched a little TV, maybe I got a drink or a little bit of food or what have you. I didn't rush to the phone right away because that's what the mind might have wanted to do. But instead I restrained the mind, and I sat there, and 30 minutes, an hour went by, however long it was, and then I went and picked up the phone and was like, oh, okay, and I checked the phone. But knowing this situation had occurred, I didn't just let that attachment go in just that one situation. So now, 2 or 3 days later, knowing that I had this attachment in my mind, this craving, this desire, this longing, yearning, this craving for permanence, I decided 2 or 3 days later to intentionally leave the phone at home. So now I went outside, intentionally leaving the phone at home. And I didn't have the fear anymore, but there was this little bit of agitation. I was just like, gosh, like I just wish I had that phone with me. So I went outside and I noticed the discontentedness was less. There wasn't the fear, but there was still this agitation, this underlying uncomfortableness in going outside without the phone. So then, I did the same thing. When I came home, I didn't go to the phone right away. I just kind of did some other things. And then I waited another 2 or 3 days and I did it again. And this time, after maybe doing this 3 or 4 or 5 times, I realized that, hey, it looks like the mind has let go of this attachment, because each time I was leaving the house without the phone, not even the fear was there, not even that slight little uncomfortableness was there. And I suspected that I had fully eliminated the attachment to the phone. But about 2 months later after this, I once again accidentally left my phone at home. I was driving down the road and I reached for my pocket and I realized there was no phone. And I was just like, oh, well, the phone's gone. I'll get it when I get home. And the mind was completely content. So I could see that it went from this fear to this uncomfortableness to, oh, well, the phone's at home, no big deal. The mind had eliminated its craving. And then about a year after that, I had dropped the phone and the entire screen broke and crashed. And I just looked at it and I smiled and I was like, well, of course, the phone's impermanent. Of course that just happened, right? And fortunately, I had another phone. I didn't have to go out and buy one at that time. So you can see that your mind's becoming more and more peaceful in any one of these situations. And you can do this particular thing that I'm describing here, is put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in, which is my mind didn't want to leave the house without the phone, but I needed to implement this plan to specifically introduce some impermanence so that the mind could gradually get away from this over multiple sessions. And I always had the breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity ongoing, but then I needed to surgically go in and remove this specific craving. The same thing happened when I was getting rid of coffee. I realized that the caffeine in the coffee was making the mind overactive, so I needed to get rid of this. So I started going these periods of time where I didn't have coffee. And I would go 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days without coffee. And then I would realize that the mind was craving it and longing and yearning, and there'd be all this pressure in the mind. And gosh, I just wanted to get that coffee so badly. And sometimes I would just do it. I would just be like, you know what? Let me give the mind a little bit about what it wants. There's all this pressure built up in the mind. Let me just have a cup of coffee. And that's one of the reasons why I moved to Thailand, actually, because they have iced coffee everywhere. And I really enjoyed iced coffee at that time. So every street corner pretty much has iced coffee here, right? So it's very easy to get iced coffee. So I would go maybe 3, 4, 5 days without a coffee, and then I would have one. But then I would extend it, and I would say, okay, now I'm going to go 10 days or 14 days, right? And then I would go that distance. And now I would maybe need a coffee again. And then I would go maybe 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, and then I would need a coffee again, right? This is like sometimes when you're trying to distance yourself from these cravings, that you'll feel the pressure building up in your mind. It's almost like a dam. If there's a dam where the dam's closed and the water is building up and the pressure is building up, the way that they protect this multi-million-dollar structure is they open up the dam and they let some of the water out. And then once the water comes out and the pressure drops back down, they close the dam again. And that's the same thing that you're going to need to do with certain cravings. As you're distancing yourself from a particular craving, you might feel the pressure building up in the mind, and you need to just maybe do a little bit of that thing. Now, if it was like using cocaine or heroin, I wouldn't suggest you do this. But if it's something like a coffee or something like this, you can do these things without issue. But just then get right back into it put this plan together where you extend the amount of time that you're distancing the mind from a particular craving, desire, attachment. Because the mind craves permanence and it wants things to be permanent, when you start implementing change in your life, the mind's going to revolt. It doesn't like this. So one of the ways to say the mind is craving permanence is to say that it does not like impermanence. The unenlightened mind doesn't like change. So if you can do these little incremental changes, the mind tends to acclimate to that better. So if that time when I left the house without the phone, if I would have tried to make that like 10 days without the phone, the mind wouldn't have liked that, right? It would have had all this pressure. So by leaving the house without the phone and extending the amount of time that I was gone, but then 2 or 3 days, I took the phone out with me. But then I intentionally left at home. So I made these little incremental changes. The same thing with the coffee. It's just making these little incremental changes. Because just like a candle, when it's going out, it kind of flickers and flickers and flickers. And you might think it goes out, and then boom, it comes back on again. This is the way some of the cravings are, is you'll think that they're gone. They can even go dormant for as long as 6 months or so. And then boom, they flare back up on you. I saw a couple of cravings that did that, where I thought it was completely gone. It went away and didn't have any kind of urges or longing or yearning for that particular thing. And I thought it was gone. And it had been 6 months since that craving had arisen. But then boom, it rose back up. And sometimes it rose back up really strong, right? So you're going to need to be attentive to the mind, using your mindfulness or awareness of mind to be aware of any of these longing, yearning, and these cravings. And at the same time, understand that you're going to need to gradually ease the mind away from this. So the idea of going cold turkey and cutting over to something that it is that you're trying to do, either eliminating a certain attachment or bringing something wholesome into your life, like say you're interested in moving to a plant-based food supply, the idea of drawing a line in the sand and cutting over a cold turkey, this isn't typically going to work, because the mind needs this gradual training, this gradual practice, and this gradual progress. You need to incrementally move the mind in the direction of something wholesome and incrementally move it away from something unwholesome. So you're going to need to find new suppliers for food. You're going to need to find new restaurants, new recipes, and things like this. So you're going to need to gradually move towards something like a plant-based food supply if that's what you're choosing to do. Or if you're choosing to move away from caffeine or something like this, you're going to probably find that you need to gradually do that. And the mind is going to be more comfortable with that. Where if you went cold turkey, the mind's going to revolt on you and it's not going to like it. But this is the process that you would like to follow. That anytime the mind is discontent, when you notice the bodily sensation or the conditioned feeling or the condition of the mind, so either the bodily sensation, the feeling, or the condition of the mind has arisen, and you're noticing that discontentedness, you'd like to cut it off and let it go. It should almost be automatic by the time your mind's more fully trained, is that you just cut it off and let it go. Cut it off and let it go. You don't even have to think about it. Just right away, you just respond right away. As soon as something is arising in the mind, you'll notice the bodily sensations, you'll notice the conditioned feeling, catch it sooner and sooner, and just cut it off and let it go. And whether it's a few minutes or a few hours or a few days, go to step 2 where you reflect and you look inward and try to figure out, what are the cravings, desires, attachments? And just like that car, if you can pull over and you can pop the hood and you've got some skills and you can figure it out, wonderful. But if you need to visit the auto mechanic, visit the auto mechanic. The auto mechanic in this scenario is your teacher. You might need to take your mind into the shop. You might need to come to your teacher and say, hey teacher, I had this situation the other day and man, I got really discontent. Here's the cravings that I think that I had, but I'm not really sure. Can you help me sort this out and help me walk through this? Or you might say, hey, look, I had all this discontentedness about a week ago, and I don't even know what my cravings, desires, attachments are. Can you help me? And that's where I help you. And after doing that 2 or 3 or 4 times, you'll eventually build a skill to be able to do this on your own. I had a student one time that was studying with me for almost a year up to that point, and they contacted me and they said, hey, I went to work the other day and my house looked a certain way. And when I came home, I got really frustrated. And I don't even know why I got frustrated. But when I walked in, my wife had this craft project all over the place. And I don't even know how my mind caused this discontentedness. Can you help me figure it out? Well, it was very clear to me that their mind was craving permanence. They wanted the house to look a certain way. They left the house thinking and having the expectation and the wanting that the house is going to look exactly that way when they come back from work. And when they came back from work, their house didn't look that way. There was certain impermanence that they experienced. And that was the craving, that they wanted their house to look permanently a certain way. And their house can't look that way permanently because of the universal truth of impermanence. So their wife had this craft project all over the house. But that was impermanent too. She's going to eventually put it away, or this student might even help them to put it away, right? So as long as the mind's craving permanence, it's going to experience this discontentedness, but you're going to need to look inward to be able to uncover what is the craving, what is the desire. And in some cases, there might be multiple cravings, desires, attachments, and that's where you'll notice more intense feelings. The lighter cravings or the less cravings, they'll be softer, more muted feelings that are starting to arise in the mind. So there's this spectrum. But you need to look inwards and reflect and figure out what those cravings, desires, attachments are. Then you're going to need to put together a plan to specifically go in and eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments, all the while keeping your breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity ongoing. And where you have challenges putting together that plan, you might even talk to me about that. You're like, hey, teacher, here's the discontentedness that I experienced. Here's the situation. Here's the cravings. But I don't understand how to put together a plan to figure out how to actually surgically remove this from the mind. Can you help me with that? So this is where you might need to repeat this process over and over and over again while seeking guidance with a teacher. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn over to any and all questions that you guys have about what it is that I've been sharing, and at the same time invite you to participate in this group activity if you would like to do this, because you're going to need to develop this skill, develop this ability to look inward and figure this out, understanding what your cravings, desires, attachments are, and then put together a specific plan. So if you'd like to start doing some of that work now, you can, because you might have been discontent this morning or yesterday or last week, and you didn't have this particular wisdom that I'm sharing with you now. But now that you have a little bit of this that you've learned in the class, you might start looking inward and trying to figure out what were the cravings, desires, attachments. And if you need help to figure that out, you can ask a question by putting it into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and let me know any aspect of this situation. You can say, hey, here's the situation, and I don't even know what the cravings, desires, attachments are. Can you help me? So I'll help you understand what the cravings, desires, attachments are and how to put together a plan to surgically remove it. Or you might say, here's the situation, here's the cravings that I think it is, but I don't know what a plan would be to actually solve this. Can you help me? Or it might be, here's the situation, here's the cravings, desires, attachments, and here's the plan that I think I can use. Does that sound like something that's logical that would work? And then I will help you with that. So you can ask any and all questions that you like. And if you'd like, you can share this, and then I will help you to develop this skill, because you're going to need to develop this, because you wouldn't be able to eliminate your cravings if you weren't able to identify them. And then once you identify them, the breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity is wonderful. And that's going to help you to a certain degree. But being able to go in and almost surgically remove these cravings, that's what's going to really help you tremendously. And that's where you'll see more and more progress, and you'll see that the mind becomes enlightened more readily. Rather than just sit back and just rely on breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity, you can put the mind in these situations and actively eliminate these attachments through almost surgically eliminating them. So if you guys have questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any and all questions that you like. Okay, it looks like Fiona has a question. Go ahead, ma'am. You'll need to unmute yourself there. We still don't have you yet, Fiona. Maybe you can sort that out. I'm pressing a button here that should pop up a screen on your Zoom that helps you to unmute. Looks like Robert has a question. We'll go. Oh, there you go, Fiona. Perfect. Robert, we'll come to you next.
Sorry about that. Right. So I've got a deep-rooted problem with traveling away from home. So the situation that I had recently was my work had planned 2 conferences, both of which I didn't end up going on because of this discontentedness. On both occasions, they had coaches booked. And as the days were getting closer, The whole coach thing made me feel anxious. So I had a expected feeling of I was going to be trapped on the coach. I was going to have a panic attack on the coach. And the second journey, because the first conference I didn't go on, I went off sick. The second one, I thought, I've got this. The travel's not so far, so I'm going to be all right. And then I was all right up until the night before. I didn't get any sleep. It just totally took over. And the next morning I got up and I phoned in sick. So that's my problem.
Okay.
I think it's okay if I was driving myself, but it's when it's if it's going by with somebody else is driving.
Is it just in a bus or a coach, or is it even in a car that you don't feel comfortable driving with other people?
Not so much in a car. I'd be more comfortable if it was somebody I knew that was driving, but it could be on a boat, a plane, and if I'm traveling away from home, on the way home, I don't get the same feelings.
Okay. And have you ever been in any kind of accident with a vehicle where somebody else was driving?
No, but I have had panic attacks I was on a boat recently, really trying to push myself out of my comfort zone, and I got the feelings of panic came over me, but I distracted myself by taking photographs of the surroundings, and then that feeling went away.
Perfect. That is perfect, Fiona. That's exactly what you would like to do. So you're going to need to put the mind in this situation, and it sounds like you figured it out with that particular situation where you went on a boat. The mind wasn't comfortable, but it gained its composure because you were redirecting the mind with the camera. This is perfect. This is the kind of thing that you would like to do. And you're going to need to do this multiple times. Just like I had to leave the house multiple times without the phone, you're going to need to, whether it's a boat or a plane or a bus, you're going to need to do these things multiple times where you put the mind in this situation. And if right now you feel comfortable with somebody else driving, then you do that maybe a time or two, or maybe you do that already with your husband or your family members or people like this. And then as you are now comfortable with that, then you move to the next thing, which is maybe a coworker at work where maybe you guys go out to lunch together, and this isn't someone that you would typically drive with, but it's just a short drive. Maybe it's just to go get some lunch somewhere, and your mind can handle that short little bit. And now you put the mind in that situation, and now you increase the amount of time, and you increase whether it's a bus or a coach or a boat or a plane, you increase those kinds of things for the amount of duration and the size of the vehicle. This is going to allow the mind to be put in the situation and ultimately train it to be composed and calm and joyful and peaceful in those situations. And it might be quite painful for you as you're doing this, but you kind of have to walk through the fire in order to get to the other side where there's fresh air, where there's peacefulness and joy waiting for you. So because the mind has had these cravings where it's holding on and it gets pleasant feelings when you drive by yourself, now when the mind isn't getting what it wants, the craving isn't getting fulfilled, it's going to experience some painful feelings as you're letting go of these cravings, desires, attachments. And you're going to need to do this on a consistent basis, maybe once a week, once every 3 or 4 days. You're going to need to kind of hit it multiple times before the mind's going to be willing to let go.
Thank you. That's great advice. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I have another thing I would like to ask you related to this. Do you have a fear of death?
I haven't given it a huge amount of thought. So I don't think I'm fearing it at the moment. I just haven't thought about it much.
Okay, because there's something else you can do if there's any fear of death. Maybe some of you guys actually asked me that particular question because there's a craving, desire, attachment for existence. And if that was part of what you're describing, that can be another craving, right? That's another layer to this. And there's something that you're going to need to do there too. So you can be observant of the mind and see, what is it? Is it the mind's fearing an accident? Is it fearing, getting lost and not being able to find your way back home? Is it, what is it? There's some underlying craving and longing, yearning. We know it's when you're in the vehicle that somebody else is got control over. So that's why you would like to put your mind in that situation. But you would like to get even more specific with this, because there might be an underlying craving where the mind's fearing death. The fear is the symptom. The cause of this is the craving for permanent existence, and there's something else that you need to do in order to be able to eliminate that. So if you're noticing that, just let me know by private message or any of these classes, or posting in the Facebook group, and I'll teach you what you need to know about how to eliminate that craving.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's go to Robert. Robert, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, so I've been working on a craving sort of to stay informed and read the news and stuff like that. And so when I was traveling, I realized this was very significant. And so what I did was I got rid of the apps that I sort of used without realizing it that was causing discontentedness, and replaced those with other healthier applications like reading books or meditating or journaling. And that was very successful. But I now have a desire, I would like to stay more informed and not be completely disconnected from the news. But I'm having a hard time reintroducing that into my life without having some sort of craving, desire, attachment. The plan that I've sort of had is to find alternate news sources that I can look at in a specific time that is not necessarily craved, but I still feel a lot of intense feelings anytime I'm trying to stay informed. What would be a good way to strategically bring that back into life, or is that something I just need to let go of completely?
Sure. So you were moving in a helpful direction here when you deleted your apps, because that's a good thing. Because in order to eliminate a craving, the Buddha talks about this, and I can confirm that this is true, that what you need to do is you need to distance your mind from the object. That's the first part of eliminating a craving, is distancing your mind from the object. And then with that breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity, and what I'm teaching you now, is to surgically go in and remove it. And certain cravings, desires, attachments that were once in the mind, once the mind is let go, you can reintroduce that particular object, because the craving, desire, attachment isn't the object, as you know, it's within your mind. It's the longing, yearning for the object. So in a situation where it's a news thing, that's not harmful. Whereas if it was like a craving for cocaine or heroin or pornography or something like this, you're going to need to eliminate it 100% and never go back to it. But something like this, you can ultimately bring it back into your life, but you need to be able to understand how to do that. So the first thing is that you definitely need to distance your mind from it. And it sounds like it's still pretty strong of a craving. So I would encourage you to say that now isn't the time to reintroduce it. You're going to need to go a longer period of time where the mind is away from things. And you probably realize this, that even though you don't watch the news, you know what's going on because people tell you, right? Like in your friends and family and coworkers, people will tell you what's going on. So you'll find out. You won't be completely oblivious to what's going on in the world. So you can distance yourself, because I did this for 1 year one time. I went away from the news for 1 year and I still knew what was going on in the world to a certain degree, right? So distance yourself from it. And there's going to need to be an elongated period. I don't know how long it's been that you had your phone apps deleted, but it sounds like you need to go a longer period, because you're mentioning that it's, kind of rising up pretty intensely. But then once you feel like it is time to reintroduce it, then you do this very slowly. So what you do is you look at the news for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 minutes or whatever it is, then you put it down, and then you don't look at it for another day or 2 or 3. Right? And then after 2 or 3 days, then you look at it again for 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, and then you put it down, and then you go away from it for 2 or 3 or 4 days. Because the problem in this situation, it isn't that you're picking up the news and you're looking at it. The problem is that maybe you can't put it back down. Or it might be that you're obsessively thinking about, what's going on, what's going on, what's going on, what's my alerts. So you would like to train the mind to be able to put it down. That's what you're interested in doing. So that's how you reintroduce it. And if at any point you're noticing, like maybe you go from like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 minutes to looking at the news, maybe you go to 10 or 15 or 20 minutes to looking at the news, at any point in there where you're noticing discontentedness arising, then you put it down, and now you go a week or 2 or 3 to not look at the news, that you realize like, whoa, the craving is still there. I need to distance the mind from it some more. But ultimately, once you get this craving gone, you'll be able to look at the news and you won't experience any discontentedness related to it.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think I need to stay away longer before reintroducing it. And I appreciate the strategy. It's just not ready to be implemented quite yet.
Yeah. So distance yourself from it for an extended period. And then when you bring it back in, bring it in really slowly so that if you're noticing any discontentedness, you can now distance yourself again from it, because you're going to probably need several months of being away. And like I was away from the news for a whole year at one point, and that was one of the most peaceful years I ever experienced up to that point, being away from all that stuff. But that was needed in order to train the mind to let go. And then when you reintroduce it, you do that slowly so you can learn how to look at it and put it back down, and then look at it and put it back down, and not experience any discontent feelings associated with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, it looks like Julia has her hand up. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Teacher David. So I wanted to go over two cravings. First one being certain types of music does make me feel irritated. I think it's perhaps just a craving for certain types of music versus, not certain types, just a craving for, I guess just certain types of music. And sometimes it's my loved ones who play this and I can't necessarily walk away from it. And so what I've sort of done is just look outside or draw my attention to the outside surroundings or something else to kind of redirect my mind. And then it's over after like a few minutes. But I wanted to clarify, when you say surgically remove it, do you mean try to think of it and then let it go constantly during your meditation session?
When I mean surgically remove it, it's meaning put the mind in a situation that's going to specifically eliminate that specific craving. And you need to trigger these cravings in some cases in order to train the mind to eliminate it and let it go. So it's not like a pill that you can, take a pill and 30 minutes later you don't have a headache, but you can put the mind in these situations like the phone. Like what the mind wanted to do in that situation is turn around and get the phone. But I knew that wasn't going to solve the problem because the mind was just craving permanence for the phone. So I needed to put the mind in that situation so it could surgically let it go. So it could specifically be working on that specific craving. Whereas if I just kept getting the phone and I was obsessively trying to hold on to the phone and make sure I had it every single day before I left the house, that doesn't actually solve the problem. Or if I turned around and went to get it, that doesn't solve the problem. So to surgically eliminate it or specifically work to eliminate that craving, I needed to induce this by choosing to leave the phone at home, and that allowed the mind to realize, hey, I can go outside without this phone and this is perfectly comfortable. And it's interesting that you talk about music, because I used this example this morning at the temple when I was teaching this topic, is that, like if you've ever been at a traffic light and a car pulled up next to you and they have music on that you like maybe rap music or hip hop or instrumental music or whatever it is that you like, you might be like, yeah, that's my jam. All right. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. You get all these conditioned pleasant feelings. But then you move to the next traffic light and somebody else pulls up to you with some other kind of music and the mind doesn't like this. Maybe it's hard rock music or something else that the mind just despises, right? And now the mind in the unenlightened state with a lack of wisdom, it'll falsely attribute these painful feelings to the person who's playing that music, when in reality it's your own craving that's causing this. So what you would do in this situation is, if you're noticing that there's pleasant feelings with certain types of music, you would like to distance your mind from that particular object because it's trying to hold on to that and crave it permanently. But then you would like to put the mind in the situation of the type of music that it doesn't like. So if it doesn't like hard rock music, for example, I would encourage somebody to listen to that regularly. Every 2 or 3 days, play a little bit of hard rock music until the mind gets to the point where it's like, you know what? yep, it's music just like everything else, and I don't need to experience frustration or agitation or annoyance just because of this particular sound that's coming into the ear. Because these cravings, desires, attachments, where it's coming from is the fetter of central desire. There are certain things that you're going to see with the eyes that are either agreeable or disagreeable. And there's certain things that you hear with the ears that are either agreeable or disagreeable. Certain odors that you smell that are either agreeable or disagreeable. Or there's certain flavors on the tongue that are either agreeable or disagreeable. There are certain physical objects that come in contact with the body, either agreeable or disagreeable. And then there are certain things that go through the mind, certain thoughts. These are called the six sense bases. And they're either going to be agreeable or disagreeable. Because of craving, desire, attachment, the mind sees this contact through the six sense bases as either agreeable or disagreeable. When you get rid of craving, desire, attachment, it's not agreeable or disagreeable, it's just a sound, or it's just an odor, or it's just a flavor. But when there's craving in the mind, it's going to have something agreeable that it hears, and it's going to want to hold on to this and want it to be permanent, a certain type of music. But then when it hears something that's disagreeable, it's going to want to push it away with aversion, or it's going to become bitter and harsh and hostile, or you're going to put your expectations on someone and try to control them. So in these situations where, like with Robert, he was talking about, I think that he gets these certain pleasant feelings when he looks at the news and he feels informed, he gets these certain pleasant feelings. So in his situation, I'm teaching him to distance himself from that object and train the mind to let it go and then gradually reintroduce it. If there's a situation where you're hearing music and you're not getting pleasant feelings from this music, but you're getting painful feelings when you're having this contact. So in that situation, you would like to put the mind in that situation where you're actually hearing that particular music so that you can train the mind, like you don't need to have the painful feelings when you hear this hard rock music, for example. So does that help you, Julia? I think I need to help you get off mute.
Thank you, Teacher David. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That definitely does clarify. And then the second one that I have is I find social interactions for like 1 to 2 hours very pleasant, but then if it's longer than that, it goes to like 4 to 5 hours. It gets very draining for me, and I get very annoyed. And if I am forced to do that for a while, then I get angry, and it kind of goes into this vicious cycle where I have aversion. So do I do the same thing as I sort of put myself in a situation where I solely kind of expose myself, like try to extend the 2 hours to maybe 3 hours and then 4 hours, or what do you advise in that instance?
I didn't hear the first part. What was the craving, desire, attachment, or the contact that you're having?
Oh, it's social interactions.
Oh, okay, social
with
interactions.
certain groups of people.
Yes, that's what you would like to do. So all the while that you have your breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity, you're continuously doing that and accumulating the benefits of that. Every once in a while, you would like to put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in, which is the social interaction. And if 2 to 3 hours is your limit, then that's where you're at. Yes, you would like to gradually increase that so that you get to the point where you're completely comfortable and completely content and joyful no matter what, whether you're alone or whether you're in this social interaction. Because by the time you get to enlightenment, there's nothing that's going to shake up the mind. So if it's 3 or 4 hours or 5 hours of social interaction and the mind's done and it's discontent at that point, that's your limit, but you would like to go beyond that. And even if it's 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes beyond it, just move the envelope a little bit, move it forward a little bit, and then go be alone for 5 days or a week or 2 or however long you need, and then do it again. And now if it was 3.5, 4 hours that you did the previous time, now try to move it a little bit further and then move that a little bit further. But if you're getting to the point where you think your conduct is going to become unskillful, you would like to walk away from the situation, even if it's been 30 minutes or an hour. And even though you're trying to get to 4 or 5 hours, if you think you're going to be unskillful, that's going to produce unwholesome karma. Just walk away from the situation. No need to force the mind to be there for 5 hours if you're going to be unskillful, because that's going to make matters worse. And then just pick it up another time.
Thank you, Teacher David.
Yeah, you're welcome. You can
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You can just pick it up another time and just walk away from that situation. And that's one of the beauties about doing this particular thing that I'm talking about, is you gain control. You gain the ability to put the mind in the situation, experience that contact for a period of time, and then walk away from the situation. And at any point that you find that the mind is too uncomfortable and you're going to become unskillful, you can walk away from that situation. Whereas if the mind is experiencing this contact, like say you're driving and you can't control the music of the person next to you, you can't control that. So in that situation, the mind can become highly discontent. But in the situation where you're doing it yourself at home, if listening to hard rock music for 15 minutes is all you can take before you just get raging, you can walk away from it. Where in the car, you can't do that when the person's next to you. Or if 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour is all you can take, you have the ability and the control to be able to walk away from that situation. Whereas if you aren't in that, if you're not inducing this yourself, you don't maintain that control that you do in the situations, in the plan and the approach that I'm describing for you guys. Okay. So Julie, I'm not sure if you still have another question or something. I see your hands up.
I don't, sorry.
Oh, okay.
I forgot to unraise it. But thank you so much. That was very helpful.
Yeah, no worries. All right. So it looks like Joe, you're next. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, David.
Hello, hello.
I was recently in a situation this week where I had to go look at a job. Somebody wanted me to do a re-roof for them, repair their roof. Anyways, somebody I had worked with before, but I guess, so I went to look at it, and come after looking at it, I gave them the impression that I would do the job, and I don't know, I never really wanted to. Like the whole time I was there, I was like, oh, this is going to be miserable. And, it's not something I typically do anyhow, but since I worked for the guy before, or not for him, he'd actually done a job for me, but we're acquaintances. And so I got home and I was like beating myself up for, I don't know, must have been 3 hours about why I don't want to do this job. And so I finally decided to call the guy and say, hey, and I just felt terrible the whole time I was telling him, and I would realize that I would only be doing the job to please him, basically. And maybe for a bit of money, but I would say that wasn't as important as just not saying no to someone I knew or not disappointing someone. And, that's, I guess, kind of been a story of my life, basically. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm just sharing that, I'm just happy that I made the call, because I finally decided, hey, I'm just going to call this guy back and, Band-Aid this thing. And I guess I'm better off for it, but it's been kind of annoying to kind of live that way for a long time. That's all.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Joe. This is one of the reasons why eliminating cravings, desires, attachments is so important, because they motivate unwise decisions. Remember back to chapter 9, when I talked about the natural law of karma, when I talked about craving, anger, and ignorance are the roots of all unwholesome karma. That anytime you make decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance, it's going to produce unwholesome results or unwholesome karma. So in this situation, you had a certain craving to either help this person, or you had a certain attachment to this person, and your mind was just like, yeah, I'll do the job. But inside, you really didn't want to. But this craving, this holding on, this wanting things to be a certain way, motivated this unwise decision. And then it produced this unwholesome karma, which was the discontentedness arising in the mind. But luckily you caught it, and you sat there for 3 hours and you figured it out, and you're like, you know what, let me back out of this because this isn't wise for me to go forward. So you were able to ultimately make a wise decision. But what you would like to do is get better and better at this and see it sooner and sooner, which this experience is going to help you to be able to do that, where now you realize that, hey, if you show up to a job and it's not something that you prefer to do, then, just let them know, right? And one of the things that I see people here in Thailand do is they will refer the person to somebody else. It's like, hey, I'm not going to be able to do this job for you, but this person can, and you might be able to give them a call. I know they have skills in this area and this is something they prefer to do. Perhaps you'd like to give them a call. So that way you feel like you're satisfying the need to be able to help people, and you're not actually needing to step forward and do this job yourself. So that might be something you have in your back pocket. Or if you don't have a reference, you can say to the person, hey, I'm not able to do this job, but if you'd like, I can find somebody for you that can, right? And then maybe you find somebody to help this person if you have the ability to do that. You may or may not have the ability to do that. You've got a young family. It might just be like, hey, sorry, I can't do this job. I appreciate you thinking about me and considering me for the job, but I'm not going to be able to do it. And, if you have something in the future that comes up, I'd surely be interested in hearing about it. And thank you so much for even thinking about me, right? That might be a way for you to say you're not able to do the job. So oftentimes the unenlightened mind doesn't like to hear the word no, right? If you say, no, I can't do this job, you might have thought like this person's going to get angry or mad or something like this. So you'll need to find these very skillful ways of how to say no without saying no. I actually teach this in this course that I'm about to start tomorrow. I'm teaching a course called Harmony in Relationships. And one of the classes in there is called The Art of the Friendly No, how to say no without saying no. So in this situation, you're going to need to get really good at saying no without saying no. So that's where you say, hey, Robert, I really appreciate you calling me in on this job. Thank you for thinking about me. It really makes me feel great to know that you have enough confidence in me to do this type of work. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do it, but I really value that you've asked me to do it, and maybe in the future I'll be able to do some other work for you if you're able to give me a call, or however you word it, right? You'll find your own personality to be able to do that. But that's essentially saying no without saying no, right? And that's what you'll need to get really good at.
Okay. Well, yeah, it was just about disappointment, really, and just saying no.
Yeah.
Upbringing. It's like like a lot of people, you just don't say no when you're young.
Yeah.
Or you're not allowed to. Anyways, and I had one more question, just a quick one, about guilt, because I miss meditation sometimes, and I do feel guilty. And if you miss more than one, you're like, now you feel extra guilty. And is that just so to sort of repair that would be just right effort, just saying, making the effort, just getting it done, the way to fix that guilt. Yeah. I don't know,
Yeah, you've got a craving for meditation to be permanent, right? There's a craving for meditation, and you need to be able to realize that meditation is impermanent. While you would like to aspire to get 2 or 3 sessions per day in, there's going to be a day or two here or there where you only get 1 or you don't get any. You might have that occasionally happen. So using this teaching that I just shared with you, which is put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in, if you can build up your practice to a point where you're consistently meditating, say for 5 or 7 or 10 days, and you're consistently meditating for that period of time, what I would encourage you to do, and I know this is going to sound strange, skip meditation. Don't meditate for a day. And now you've put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. But then right after that, get right back into your meditation again. And if you notice any guilt coming up, cut it off and let it go. Cut it off and let it go. And now you meditate for 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 days straight, and then intentionally miss meditation and observe the mind and see, is there any guilt that comes into the mind? So this is putting the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. That's that plan to surgically remove this craving, desire, attachment that you have, because your meditation practice isn't permanent. While we talk about 2 or 3 sessions per day, which would essentially be about 60 meditations a month if you did 2 per day, well, if you did 60, wonderful. But you know what? If you do 52 or 53 in a month, hey, you're going to get to enlightenment. If you consistently can do 53, 55 meditations a month, you're going to get to enlightenment if you continue to do the work, right? You're going to ultimately progress towards this enlightened mental state. So your enlightenment isn't going to be determined on whether you miss meditation today or not. It's going to be determined on, can you consistently put together multiple years of meditating on a consistent, ongoing basis. So where you see that there's this attachment to meditation, skip it intentionally a few times here and there to train the mind to let go of this craving, desire, attachment.
Thank you. I know you've said that 1,000 times, but I just needed a reminder, I guess.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so we have some things coming in here in Zoom. It looks like Steve is saying, teacher, are there attachments, desires, and cravings that are wise, such as the desire to follow the path or the craving for enlightenment? any kind of desire, any type of craving, it's going to produce discontentedness. If somebody's craving enlightenment, they actually wouldn't be able to get to it because the mind's longing, yearning for it. So when we talk about a craving, desire, attachment, that's the longing, yearning, the chasing after it. And let's use this example of craving enlightenment, where somebody's longing, yearning, and craving enlightenment. They're not going to be able to get to enlightenment that way because the mind's longing, yearning for it. But also, if you are on this other side where you are indifferent and you could care less whether you got angry or frustrated or agitated or annoyed, you're not going to get to enlightenment there either. So there's this middle way that the unenlightened mind tends to have difficulties to be able to see, because it usually sees this craving and it chases after things. Or it's over here with this dullness, this lethargic condition, this indifference, and that's the opposite side of the spectrum. But the middle way in this particular example is to have the goal, the objective, or the inspiration, or the aspiration to work towards enlightenment and realize that it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So you gradually work towards it, but without a longing and a yearning. So prior to learning these teachings, when we use the words cravings or desire or wants or expectations, it has kind of a slightly different meaning to us until we actually come to understand these teachings and what's really truly going on. Like maybe you might ask a family member, do you want to go to the movies? Right? And that might be the way that we typically talk. Or we might say to your child, like, I expect you to clean your room. But the more you get in touch with what these words are really doing, which is this longing and yearning, you might notice that your word choices start to change. That instead of saying to my wife, do you want to go to the movies? I will say, would you like to go to the movies? Are you interested in going to the movies? Right? Because this want is this longing, yearning. So if you want to get to enlightenment, you actually won't get to enlightenment. Or if you desire or crave or long or yearn for enlightenment, you won't get to it. So there's no such thing as a wholesome or a wise craving. All cravings, desires, attachments are going to lead to discontentedness no matter what it is. So you'd like to come to this middle where you gradually pursue things as a goal, objective, or interest, which means if you accomplish that goal, that's fine. But if you don't accomplish it, that's fine too. And you might notice a change of your vocabulary and the way you interact with people. This is going to really help you to eliminate cravings from the mind because you're not using that wants, the expectations, and things like this. And this will slowly adjust how the mind functions in the world. Because as long as we use the words want and expect, not only does it train the mind to have these longing and yearning, and you'll get discontent when you don't get what you want, but the people around you are going to respond to you differently. Like if I say to my son, like, I want you to wash the dishes, that's going to have a certain feeling, like I want you to do this, or I expect you to wash the dishes while I go to the temple. When I get back, I expect them to be done by the time you get back. That has a certain ring, a certain air to it. Where if I say, Bailan or son, I would like you to focus on washing the dishes while I'm gone, is that something that you would be willing to do? And he's like, yeah, I'll take care of it for you, Dad. All right, excellent. I appreciate that. Right? It has a different feeling. So you'll notice not only does your mind maintain its contentedness when you get rid of this wants and expectations, but you'll notice the people around you will interact with you in a different way. And you'll be more influential and more helpful, more successful by talking with these other words other than want or expect or desire or craving, and use words like interest or would you like to go to the movies? Are you interested in going to the movies? And they may say yes and they may say no, and you can maintain your contentedness either way. I said to a student not long ago, we were going on a field trip away from the temple, and he said, hey, can I ride my motorbike to the place where we're going? And I'm like, yeah, sure, you can ride your motorbike. And then the day of the event, he said, hey, I'm not going to ride my motorbike. I'm going to come in the transportation with you guys. And I said, perfect. And he came into the transportation with us. And then when he was in the transportation, I said, hey, just to let you know, I didn't want you to come with us in this transportation, but it's really nice that you have come, right? I didn't have this longing, yearning. I didn't want you to come. But it's really nice that you have decided to come, right? So the mind can maintain its contentedness. Whether he rode his motorbike and he met us there, hey, peaceful and joyful. If you choose to come with us, hey, peaceful and joyful, this is really nice that you've come, but I didn't want it. And this is kind of strange. And I said this intentionally among the students. And I said to him, I said, I didn't want you to come. And right away, I saw the students like look a little bit strange. And I was like, I bet that sounds a little bit odd to hear me say that I didn't want you to come. But when you understand the longing and yearning behind that word, you'll understand that, I had an interest for people to come. I enjoy when people come. It's nice when everybody rides in the same transportation, but that is impermanent. And sometimes people drive themselves either in a car or a motorbike, or sometimes they just meet us there. So you can purge those kinds of words from your vocabulary, and you'll find your mind will maintain its peacefulness more readily, and you'll interact with people around you more successfully as well. We have a question here from Brent, or maybe something that he's sharing. What about craving for meditation? I feel like if I don't get my morning session in, that I'm slightly off until I can hop on the cushion and dive inside. Yes, that kind of, I think, got answered with Joe, that there's a craving, desire, attachment there in the mind. But you will notice that before the mind is enlightened, that you will notice that as you're meditating, that if you don't meditate, you feel off on that particular day because the mind didn't get its meditation in. And in this situation, as you keep meditating, you will experience that eventually, if you miss meditation here and there, you'll be completely fine. But I would suggest for you to do the same thing that I suggested for Joe, is that build up your meditation practice where you're consistently meditating, and I think you are, Brent, but then occasionally intentionally miss meditation and train your mind that in the situation where you don't meditate, you can still maintain your calmness and composure even in those situations. And you're going to need to probably do that multiple times. So go like 10, 15 days where you're consistently meditating and then intentionally miss it. And then go another 10, 15 days where you're meditating and then intentionally miss it. And keep doing that until you notice that your mind can be completely content without your meditation. And I'm talking here about discontentedness. If you're noticing that you're less concentrated and you're less focused, that's because you didn't get your meditation in, and that's not discontentedness. That's just the qualities of the mind aren't there. But if you're noticing discontentedness, that's where you would like to skip your meditation every once in a while until you maintain your contentedness, whether you got meditation or not. But if it's just a lack of focus and clarity and concentration, I don't suggest you do what I'm talking about. That's not because of the attachment. That's because the mind didn't get its training in. It's like you don't feel as strong because you didn't go to the gym and exercise. So the same thing is true about the mind. Okay, we have a question here. I think it's EY. EY says, I, on other hand, am being sort of attached to meditation at night to shake off any negative emotions, say due to stress at work, or try to reduce the intensity of such negative feelings during the day. If I don't meditate, I think I will feel worse due to past experience, and it will worsen over time. Hence, I rather meditate to be more peaceful. I think there is some craving for meditation enlightenment, or is there anything I should do about it? So it's the same thing. If you have a craving for meditation, EY, you're going to need to skip it every once in a while and train the mind to go without it. But that's why I suggest that someone builds up their meditation practice where they're consistently meditating for 10 or 15 days, it's not going to hurt you to once a month or once every 2 weeks to miss a meditation. And that's actually going to help you if you have a craving for meditation, because in that situation where you miss meditation and you notice discontentedness is arising, you're going to have to cut that off and cut that off and cut that off. And I had this too. I noticed that I was attached to meditation. And the way that I solved it is I intentionally missed meditation a couple of times here and there. And then I was able to be content or joyful whether I had meditation or whether I didn't. So you'd like to build it up 10, 15 days or so, and then intentionally miss it, and then build it up again and intentionally miss it. And you're going to need to experience that in order to train the mind to cut it off and let it go, and cut it off and let it go. Same thing like if you were having anxiety around large crowds and you don't want to go around large crowds, the mind's going to try to push this away and think like, oh, I'm just never going to go around large crowds. But you're going to need to go around large crowds and put the mind in that situation to train it to be comfortable. So the situation that the mind doesn't like is when it doesn't have its meditation, it doesn't feel comfortable. And you're going to need to understand that the meditation is impermanent, and you're going to need to introduce this impermanence into your meditation practice occasionally here or there. And then once you realize that your attachment has been eliminated and that you can be just as content and joyful whether you get meditation or not, now you just know that it's a wise practice to consistently meditate, and you work to meditate every single day. But every once in a while, put in a day where you don't meditate, or one particular session. But then once you notice that the mind's let go and it can be content, that's where you go to consistently meditating every day. And that's where you'll be able to do that, because you'll have seen for yourself that the mind performs better when you meditate. But in order to get to enlightenment, if you have a craving for meditation, you won't actually get to enlightenment. Your mind will still be discontent whenever you miss meditation. So you're going to need to induce that to train the mind to be content and peaceful and joyful in a situation where it is meditating and where it's not meditating. And that's how you eliminate it. All right, Steve.
Thank you, teacher David.
Oh, you're welcome, EY. Pleased to help you. You're welcome, Steve. Pleased to help you. And same with you, Brent. I see your thank you there. You guys are very welcome. Pleased to help you guys. All right, let's see. I don't see any other questions coming in anywhere. Let me just check one more time. Yeah, I don't see anything anywhere. So what I'll do then is just end our class by thanking all of you guys, like I typically do, for learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha. It takes a certain amount of dedication and determination and diligence to be able to practice the teachings, because you need this consistent ongoing training. And there's various things that you're going to be learning at different times and getting your arms around this slowly but surely. So that's why I'm just gradually introducing you to the teachings little by little. It's almost like a drip feed, like an IV, right? Just drip feeding the teachings and helping you guys learn them little by little. So this is chapter 13. If you haven't read this yet, I suggest that you read it. If you've already read it and you feel like you'd like to read it again, you can always do that. Next week, we're going to be in chapter 14, which is titled Cultivating Healthy Mental States, Loving Kindness, Compassion, Sympathetic Joy, and Equanimity. I'm going to be talking about and helping you learn the 4 healthy mental states. They're oftentimes referred to as the Brahma Viharas. These are loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. This is where the Buddha gets the reputation sometimes of being like a doctor, that I'm going to describe to you certain symptoms that you're going to experience in your mind, and then there's a certain prescription, and it's one of these 4 healthy mental states. So where you see jealousy coming in, there's a certain antidote for that. Or if you see anger, there's a certain antidote for that. Or if you see indifference or worry or anxiety, there's a certain prescription for that. So while the Buddha typically will get this reputation of being like a doctor because he sees a certain symptom and he prescribes a certain antidote, you can actually be your own doctor. You don't need another person to tell you what to actually use. So if you understand the symptoms of the mind and you start being able to be aware of those with your mindfulness, and then you know the prescription to apply, which is one of these 4 healthy mental states, you'll be able to apply that prescription. So I'm going to be giving you guys some more tools to be able to eradicate these discontent feelings next week. That chapter 14, it's very short. I think it's only like 1.5 pages or maybe 2 or 3 pages or something like that. So you'll probably be able to read it pretty readily. But then in class, I'm going to teach it to you and show you exactly what the symptoms you're going to experience. And then this is the tool or technique to be able to use in order to eliminate that. It's like creating a tool belt or these prescriptions that you can apply. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week. Tomorrow, I'm going to be starting a Harmony and Relationships course. And as you guys might know, they start at 9 a.m. Thai time. So depending on where you are, that might be Sunday evening. You're always welcome to attend those by YouTube, Facebook, or Zoom. And where you can't attend live, they're all recorded. So you'll be able to find those on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook page as well. So thank you all for joining. As you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I appreciate the discussion and the dedication and diligence to learning and practicing these teachings. Anytime you need help, just feel free to ask me and I'm here to help you. So have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Perhaps we'll see you in a future class. Be well and take care. Sawadee-ka.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/supportbuddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.